Radio. The millennial conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Oh, yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now, with you. You are listening to, and damn, I hope you're watching, the Holonet on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Today it is Saturday. It is the 11th of December in the year of our Lord 2021, and there's some craziness going on. I'm not going to deny it. I know, conspicuously absent, you may have noticed the Holonet was not on last week. It was a repita. Unfortunately, family members here had taken ill. Situations needed to be dealt with, but everybody is doing just fine. So thank you very much for your thoughts, prayers, well wishes, all that good gobbledygook. But yeah, we're doing all right, folks. It's okay. But did want to still return to you today in order to provide you with your fix, your updates for the week, because there's some psychosis happening nationwide, and it really is something to see. Now, today, just want to give a quick shout-out to a couple of our sponsors. First, want to talk about preparewithmojo50.com. Preparewithmojo50.com. Sorry, I don't have them up on the visual. This is going to be largely Theater of the Mind show, a lot of audio only. Main reason for that is because I'm having some rather serious systems outages here at the forward operating base of Mojo 50, deep in the Sonoran Desert outside of Phoenix. And that's why you're not seeing very much of anything up on screen, except for like the logos and my screaming face in the avatar space there. So, where we're at now, never mind the squeaky toy, where we're at now, we've had some truly remarkable and terrifying weather strike. Not here, but through the central United States, in Illinois, and also in Missouri, and in Kentucky. Most recent reports show 70 people feared dead in the state of Kentucky alone, the governor said, after tornadoes hit across the central and southern United States late Friday and early this morning across parts of the central and southern United States, including Kentucky. Among the most significant damage occurred at a candle factory in Kentucky, where the strong winds collapsed the factory, and the Amazon warehouse in western Illinois, and a nursing home in Arkansas, killing people in each community and leaving the responders struggling to rescue others. More than 30 tornadoes have been reported in the last 24 to 48 hours in 6 states, including Missouri, Tennessee, and Mississippi. A stretch of more than 250 miles from Arkansas to Kentucky might have been hit by one violent long-track twister, meteorologists have said. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear said, "I'm pretty sure the number killed in Kentucky is north of 70. It may, in fact, exceed 100 before the day is done. The level of devastation is unlike anything that I have seen." So, I know I kind of segued straight from Prepare with Mojo 50 into that, but this is the kind of stuff we're talking about preparing for. Preparing to be a source of support for your friends, your neighbors, and your community, making sure that you are able to take care of yourself and your family. This is a tragedy, and I don't want to see a tragedy like it impact our Mojo 50 audience, our family, our friends. So prepare yourself. Preparedness, not panic. And today, I would ask for your thoughts and your prayers for the victims and their families and everyone who is struggling to rebuild in Kentucky, Missouri, and in Mississippi and Tennessee and Arkansas. Sorry if I missed anybody. But anybody out there, if we need to start doing some buddy checks, let me know. I mean, I just called my family in Arkansas. I say called, Facebook message, but I got in touch with my family in Arkansas just to make sure everybody's okay. I touched base with my publisher. He's located in southern Illinois, just to make sure they're all right and everybody's okay. But what kills me, you know, I might talk about, hey, we have this great sponsor that helps you prepare, and, you know, talk about that because it's a good product and service. What kills me is people are taking what happened yesterday and today, and they're twisting that and they're warping that to be about climate change. If you were listening to the press conference with Joe Biden earlier today, it's all about, well, Mr. President, how much of this of the strength of this storm has to do with climate change? And he said, I can't give you a quantitative answer on that because he doesn't know. Nobody knows. Nobody can tell you that. How much stronger are these storms now, like the EF5 storm that was that hit in the last 24 to 48 hours, when you compare to the EF5 tornadoes and twisters that hit in the 90s, like the El Reno tornado, or like the Oklahoma City tornado, or the other massive F5, EF5, the enhanced Fujita scale, which measures a tornado by how much it destroys. How do you account for those? Going back into the 70s, 80s, 90s, hell, go back to the 60s. There were some unbelievable storms. Absolutely devastating storms. And I guess we're just going to forget about that? That these storms ever happened? So that's the thing that we're going to do now? Not everything is about politics. Not everything is about climate change or global warming or whatever the hell we want to call it right now. Not everything is Republican, Democrat. Not everything has to do with Washington, D.C. Smartest thing I've ever heard Joe Biden say today was, we talked about me going down there, but I think I'd just be in the way. Yeah! Sending the president and his full entourage into a disaster area? Bad move. Don't do that crap. Get out of the way. Send what help is needed. Get FEMA out there with trucks full of food. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to put the septuagenarian figurehead of the Democrat Party into harm's way for a photo op. You don't do that. But far too often, that's what we see happen. And, Republicans and Democrats, both sides are guilty of it. And it's ridiculous. So, yeah, I will give the devil his due. Smartest thing Joe Biden has ever said, in my opinion, was, no, I'm not going to go down there. I'll be in the way. I offered, and it didn't sound like a good idea. Well, yeah, duh. Dude, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't bother. You will not help. Now, big in the news this week, there are two stories that I want to hit upon, and my computer's having a devil of a time with it. Number one is this January 6th puppet commission, this hit job that has been put out. And I'm probably going to do a bigger story on this week. But Mark Meadows is no longer cooperating with the farce, the fake investigation, the partisan hack job where Nancy Pelosi dares to call it bipartisan because she got Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney, the worst rhinos in the history of the Republican Party, the biggest backstabbers the American people have ever seen. She put them two on the panel and called it bipartisan. Even though she rejected the appointees of Kevin McCarthy in a complete departure from any sort of congressional norms. The party leader was not allowed to choose the Republican Party's representation on the committee. Unheard of. Unheard of. Unbelievable. This January 6th committee, quote unquote, has zero legitimacy whatsoever. It is a partisan exercise. And Mark Meadows initially was cooperating, quote unquote cooperating, and he handed over some documentation which Esquire had the nerve to call insane documentation, which was the election fraud and foreign interference and options for January 6th, which were submitted to the president, according to Mark Meadows, which any one of us here, any conservative worth their salt, would read it and say, yeah, this seems perfectly reasonable. Why wasn't this done? And the second piece that I want to touch on, which I actually believe I will carry forward with, a new story came out, and this is from the Daily Caller, I believe. that the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, which is a truly bipartisan group, has scored the so-called Build Back Better plan. They released a new estimate for better analysis, and it adds trillions to the price tag, to the tune of $3 trillion. Let me see if I can get this pulled up for you. If anybody's watching on YouTube, BitChute, or on YouTube, BitChute, or Rumble, here's a story for you. CBO releases new Build Back Better analysis, adds trillions to the estimate. The provisions in the spending package could add as much as $3 trillion to the federal debt over 10 years if made permanent, the analysis by the Congressional Budget Office found. Now, what makes this so absolutely galling is how many times an out-and-out lie has been repeated to the American people, where Biden has said not a single penny will be added to the federal deficit. Not one penny. In appearance after appearance after appearance. Let me see if I can pull up that audio for you. He's delivered these remarks in what amounts to a whistle-stop tour all throughout the country. You know, standing up in front of Amtrak trains and acting all in all like he's some slick president from a bygone age. And making this absolutely nonsensical claim. Let's see if I can go to that audio now.
Taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. In fact, they reduced the deficit. Here's how.
Okay, so objectively BS, but let's go ahead and roll this back. It's audio from the Hill.
They don't add a single. As I said before, these plans are fiscally responsible.
Fiscally responsible,
They're fully paid for.
Paid for?
They don't add a single penny to the deficit.
You don't say.
They don't raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year.
Patently false.
In fact, they reduced the deficit. Here's how. I don't want to punish anyone's success. I'm a capitalist. I want everyone to be able to, if they want to be a millionaire or billionaire, to be able to seek their goal. But all I'm asking is, pay your fair share.
Now, that is probably the biggest lie of all. Probably the single biggest falsehood. Now, as the Daily Caller reports, the Build Back Better Act will be funded throughout a 10-year period assumed by the CBO in its analysis. There's seriously massive concerns here. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham and Missouri Representative Jason Smith, the ranking members on the Senate and House Budget Committees, requested the updated scores out of the concern that the programs listed as temporary in the Build Back Better Act will be funded throughout the 10-year program assumed by the CBO in the analysis. Many Republicans have agreed that programs such as the Child Tax Credit and the Universal Preschool and Child Care will be permanently funded by Congress, even though the Build Back Better Act does not currently fund them permanently. So how does this not cost a single penny, Joe? Democratic West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, who is the man who currently holds the keys to the U.S. government. He is the indispensable man right now of our age, which is a terrible, terrible thought. That a moderate Democrat right now holds all of our fates in his hands. He pledged he's not going to vote for the final bill. And called those strategies budget gimmicks and shell games to keep the apparent debt impact of the package low, so that way Joe can get on stage and make these claims. The initial CBO analysis found that the Build Back Better Act, as it's written, would add $367 billion to the federal debt. The CBO didn't score the Internal Revenue Service funding mechanism, although it separately found that increased tax enforcement, which is what Joe's calling for, pay your fair share. Increased tax enforcement would lower the debt impact by up to $207 billion over the 10-year period, but it would still increase the deficit. The new CBO estimate is the same as the one provided by the Nonpartisan Committee for the Federal Budget, the CRFB, shortly after the House unveiled the Build Back Better Act. Okay? The largest difference between the two estimates stems from an increase in the child tax credit that ends in 2022 in the House passed version of the bill. Here is the crazy part, okay? The highest Democrats out there, Joe Biden, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, have argued that it's fully paid for and will not impact the federal debt. But Biden's own Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, submitted a memo to senators on Thursday that were rebutted by claiming the same things. They were rebutted by economists across the political spectrum before the news was even released. She even wrote, This analysis is of a bill that the House did not pass, the Senate is not considering, and the President, who is committed to paying for permanent investment, would not sign. So, at the end of the day, what is all of it? It's all bull. It is all bull. Complete and total, unmitigated bull. It's a lie. This is Joe Biden's, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. They're very used to this system of the big lie. They've done it before. I strongly suggest you look back to the quote-unquote Affordable Care Act, which was neither affordable nor did it seem to care. Last time I looked at insurance, it's like, okay, I can spend $1,000, $1,200 a month and get something with a $10,000 deductible. And that's an 80-20 split. Simply put, the worst coverage I've ever seen in my life. I had better coverage when I was working for a big box tech store in the early aughts. I had better health care than this. When I was making $11 an hour, I had better health care than what you can find on the Affordable Care Act. That is what Build Back Better is. It is the same lies from the same mouths. It's shameful. I don't know what else to tell you. But it seems like we're having a collision, if you will. Let's think of it in like Murphy's Law terms. Anything that can go wrong will. Right? Let's try to put it in that perspective real quick. On the one side, we have runaway inflation. We have a dotard president who's trying to convince the world that he has the situation well in hand. We have skyrocketing crime rates all over the country. All over the country. Almost every major city. Did you know that? Hang on, I've got the records right here. Let me pull this up for you. You're not going to believe this crap. Get this pulled up for you here. I think you can call it the Biden effect. I think that's what I've seen it referred to as. At least 12 major cities have broken their homicide records in 2021. Here we go. Got it right in front of me now. Sorry about the delay. There's still 3 weeks left in the year, right? 2 weeks now. Major cities that have surpassed their yearly homicide records are so far St. Paul, Minnesota, Portland, Oregon, Tucson, Arizona, Toledo, Ohio, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Austin, Texas, Rochester, New York, Albuquerque, New Mexico, which broke its record back in August. Nobody's getting arrested. Nobody's getting arrested. People are getting picked up for gun possession and they're just getting let go again. They're getting picked up on minor infractions and the DA is turning them loose back out onto the street. FBI crime data shows the number of arrests nationwide plummeted 24% in 2020 from more than 10 million arrests made in 2019. The number of 2020 arrests, 7.63 million, is the lowest in 25 years according to the data. The FBI crime data for 2021 is not out yet. Stats from Chicago, good old Chirac, on Monday, November 1st, show that so far in 2021, 678 people in Chicago have been murdered. That's higher than the past 3 years. Atlanta Daily World reported they're not doing anything good. It's like they used Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to get black people's votes. Kamala Harris hasn't helped black people do anything. Think about that. So this is the Atlanta Daily World reporting that the black population in Atlanta are really looking to see what Joe Biden has done for them, especially when you consider crime has had a massive uptick. Economists forecast that employers would add 535,000 jobs in November, nearly the same rate as October's 531,000 gain. Only 210,000 were created. So, this is something that hasn't occurred in American history for at least 2 generations. We have a government that's not only failing, but is failing at everything at the same time. There are mercifully very, very few representations in our nation's nearly 3 centuries of a truly failed presidency, because it really is truly difficult to roll a 1 on every throw, and that's a nod to my people who play D&D. Rolling a 1 is a critical fail. Like, if you're swinging a sword and you roll a 1 to determine, how well you swing that sword, that means you hit yourself in the nuts. Okay? There are only 2 memorable in the post-war era. Carter, pretty immediately comes to mind, as the gold standard of a presidency without a single win, and now it seems Biden. Before the war, the list lengthens, but the most ignominious are easily Woodrow Wilson, Herbert Hoover, President Harding. Most presidents can point to something that went right, something they did that worked out well. And then you have other presidents who can't point to a single damn thing. President Buchanan. Not Pat Buchanan. We're talking back in the 1800s, kids. President Buchanan was widely held to be one of the most ineffective presidents of all time. One of the worst. Where we sit today, and I got to wrap up here for the half. Where we sit today, it's difficult to imagine anything that even the best of the mainstream media could possibly construe as a victory for Biden. I can't come up with it. I can't come up with one thing they've done right or that they've done well. And the problem is, half the country just won't see it. Because they refuse to. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Ukraine. And what could be war. You're listening to Holland on the Mighty, the Powerful Mojo 50. Stick around.
millennial conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
And we're back. You're listening to Holland on the mighty powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Thanks for hanging out through the break. Did want to really quickly tell you about a developing story here. Some silliness there. Sorry. We'll get to that developing story in just a second. But holidays are coming up. They absolutely are coming up. If you haven't done all your shopping yet, you're probably a little bit buggered. But you can still go to romikadesigns.com, romikadesigns.com. Talk to our good friends over at Romika Design. You can order yourself some beautiful gifts, including a Doc Thompson rules engraved cutting board, I think it was. Was it a cutting block or something like that? It was really cool. I'm going to check that out. You can actually order that on the Mojo 50 shop. Let me see here. Here we go. You do like a Christmas season framed wood sign. You can get Wizarding World Christmas ornaments, $13. Ooh. Children's letter and shape trainers. Oh, dude, I might buy those. Seriously, I might just buy those. That looks cool because I've got young ones. But, make sure you get over to romikadesigns.com. Romikadesigns.com. Take care of all your holiday shopping needs. There are good friends of the program, good friends and sponsors of the Holonet. And because I missed my ad call at the bottom of the hour, also did want to let you know about mypillow.com. Mypillow.com, great sponsors and supporters of Mojo 50 Radio and of the Holonet. And it would mean a great deal to us if you can get onto mypillow.com. Use your promo code Mojo50. Take care of all of your holiday shopping needs. Again, Romika Designs, MyPillow. These are great businesses that support Mojo 50, that support our independent content creators here. We are independent by virtue of the businesses that we work with and by our amazing listenership and viewership. It all comes down to you guys, and we are grateful to you, and we ask that you help support us by supporting these great sponsors. So, in the last week or so, the news has come out of the impending Russian buildup outside of Ukraine. And the situation is becoming more and more disturbing by the day, with Russian forces building up in Belarus and Russia, outside the Donbass and Luhansk regions of Russia. I'm going to go real quick just to give you a visual concept here. This is a video from CNBC. Let's check this out. They're going to explain it to us.
Just a regular winter military exercise. But take a look at this map. The Military Times reports it received this assessment from the Ukrainian military about what an invasion would look like. The red blobs are where Russian troops are reportedly deployed. The Secretary Blinken says he had a serious and sober conversation with Lavrov about what will happen if Russia does not back off.
I made very clear our deep concerns and our resolve to hold Russia responsible for its actions. It's now on Russia to de-escalate the current tensions by reversing the recent troop buildup, returning forces to normal peacetime positions, and refraining from further intimidation and attempts to destabilize Ukraine.
None of that's happened yet. Here you can see Ukrainian troops on alert. Moscow has accused Ukraine of its own military buildup. Ukraine and Russia, of course, have been locked in conflict since Russia invaded and annexed Crimea back in 2014. But recent escalations have fueled fears of an all-out war. Just last week, the Ukrainian President Zelensky claimed a group of Russians and Ukrainians were plotting a coup to overthrow his government. Michael?
Yeah, so a little bit from Shepard Smith there over at CNBC. Shep's got some good stuff, I can't really blame him too much. But that's a little old because new news coming out today, actually coming out yesterday, coming out on the 9th, coming out Thursday, coming out on the 9th. Biden, Ukraine, Zelensky talk tensions with Russia amid war fears. A grim-faced President Biden spoke with an equally solemn Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for more than an hour Thursday, as the White House denied the president was urging Kiev to make concessions to Russia. reports have been flooding in that the Biden-Harris regime has been urging Kiev that they may have to make concessions to the independence of the Luhansk and Donbass regions that border Russia that are currently controlled by pro-Russian separatist groups. Sorry, my dog. Russia has massed thousands of troops near the border, and Biden spoke with Vladimir Putin for 2 hours on Tuesday and threatened, quote, economic sanctions and consequences if Russia attacks. Okay, so what kind of consequences are we talking about? Later that same day, reported by Newsweek, a Republican senator, Senator Roger Wicker, who is a senior senator on the Armed Services Committee, while speaking with Neil Cavuto, he said sending troops to Ukraine was another option that Joe Biden should keep on the table. He even stated that tactical nuclear options should be kept on the table. He said, we're making a mistake when we take options off the table. Military actions could mean that we stand off with our ships in the Black Sea and we rain destruction on Russian capability. It could mean we participate, and I would not rule out, nor would I rule out American troops on the ground, and we don't want to rule out first-use nuclear action against Russia in Ukraine. And then, just yesterday, we got a brand new story here, this from City AM. Biden rules out military action. U.S. President Joe Biden ruled out putting American boots on the ground to defend Ukraine earlier this week, despite the looming threat of Russian invasion. The Kremlin has positioned 120,000 troops near Ukraine's eastern border in the last month, leading to increased speculation of a military intervention into the war-torn country could be imminent. And he has, according to reports, ruled out boots on the ground. Exactly opposite what Republicans in the Senate are calling for. Now, we can go back. We've had shows about the ongoing conflict in the Luhansk and Donbass regions of eastern Ukraine before. President Donald Trump was the first president to actually provide lethal aid to the Ukrainians, providing them with weapon systems in order to defend themselves. Very notably, back in 2014, then President Barack Obama refused to give lethal aid to the Ukrainians when Russia swept in and took Crimea. Just took it. All of the recent developments coming from Washington, D.C., and coming from Kiev and coming from Moscow indicate that Biden is likely not going to lift the finger to protect Ukraine. And it is startling how badly this has been handled. I am not suggesting that the United States engage in a ground war in Europe. I think that would be a disastrous idea. Ukraine, historically speaking, was a killing field. It was death incarnate for Nazi troops in World War II. They were killed going through the first time and then coming back. Ukrainians fought on both sides of the conflict. They fought with the Red Army. They fought against the Red Army. Some of them joined the Wehrmacht. The soil of Ukraine is drenched in the blood of its people. And because World War II wasn't horrible enough, then under Soviet rule, you had the Holodomor and the disaster at Chernobyl. This is a nation, this is a very, very proud nation with a long, dignified history that is getting set to be steamrolled by Moscow again. Again. You wonder why President Trump is so popular in Poland and in the Balkans, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. You wonder why Poland built the Trump military base. Not kidding. That is something that is still under construction. Because he was able, through diplomatic means and through threats of force, the believable threat of force, to push back against Vladimir Putin. There is no credible threat of force from Joe Biden. Moscow knows this. They don't take him seriously as a result. Because Putin doesn't take Biden seriously, Ukraine is in enormous danger. Nobody rationally wants the United States to engage in a ground war with Russia. In any war with Russia. Right now, when we talk about America's most lethal possible foes, the Russians should be the least of our concerns. China is ultimately the single biggest threat to the United States. The single most clear and present threat. Because of their absolute willingness to employ 5th and 6th generation warfare, to deploy economic warfare, information warfare, very successfully, I might add. For the fact that they can single-handedly annihilate the American economy. Putin's been getting constant accusations that he's been putting pressure on Germany and the EU, that he's going to cut off supplies of natural gas, but that'd be shooting himself in the foot. He wants a free hand in the nations that border Russia. Because when Russia, historically speaking, was deprived of Ukraine and the Balkans, it left Moscow and the Russian plain strategically vulnerable. And he knows this. That is why the Russians will never be satisfied until they retake Ukraine, until they retake Belarus, until they retake the Balkans and reassert their presence in Europe and also in Southern Asia. They believe that the struggle to regain these territories is existential. Because it is. Russia is not strategically relevant as a world power if they do not control these territories, either through soft power or hard power. Right now, Kazakhstan, there's a lot of soft power there. Tajikistan, same thing. Funny thing, they haven't tried to go back into Afghanistan. Why? China beat them to it. When Joe Biden haphazardly pulled American forces out of Afghanistan, who rushed into the breach? Beijing. And the administration of Narendra Modi in India is incredibly nervous. The Pakistanis are incredibly nervous because they're seeing the heavy foot of China in their region of the world now. Because the United States is weak. What I talked about before the break, about how rare it is to have a president fail at everything. Foreign policy, we're being run over by China in the South China Sea to the extent that Taiwan, realizing that American help might not come soon enough in a conflict with China, just put to sea 2 brand new Tuaqiang, sorry, my Mandarin is lousy, 2 Tuaqiang class, they call them aircraft carrier killer corvettes, which are armed with supersonic missiles. They've put 2 to sea already, and these are specifically developed for combat within the Straits of Taiwan, designed to hunt down and kill China's new aircraft carriers and China's surface fleet rapidly in order to prevent a land invasion of Taiwan from China. They will be shooting down transports. These ships can do 43 knots in the water. They're not built to do 43 knots in order to catch and hunt down a carrier. Carriers are slow as hell. They're built to do 43 knots to take out landing ships. They have a 73 millimeter cannon on the front of them, and supersonic missiles and torpedoes to engage the Chinese submarine navy as well. They're going to be building 11 of these by 2026. The Japanese, they are very convinced that we're not going to be able to help them out. So convinced that they fielded 2 aircraft carriers for the first time since World War II. The JS Izumo, which I reported the launch of in 2016 when I was writing for the other place. I wrote a story called, what was it? In America's Weakness, Our Former Foes Are Rearming. Because Japan, who constitutionally could only have a self-defense force, woke up one day and realized, the Americans might not help us under Barack Obama. And now they're seeing that sure as hell, Washington, D.C. isn't going to help them under Joe Biden. So they launched, in addition to the JS Izumo, which is a quote-unquote helicopter destroyer, which is a carrier in everything but name, that can launch and support the F-35, which they bought from us, in addition to retrofitting the JS Kaga, which is the same class. Kaga, from your history books, that was a very important name of a Japanese aircraft carrier in World War II. It was one of the ones that attacked Pearl Harbor. Actually, I think that one, I think the Kaga bit it at the Battle of Midway, the original Kaga. That one can launch the F-35 too. Japan is fielding aircraft carrier groups, at least 2 of them now, along with their own readily available fleet of lighter cruisers and destroyers. They field the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, the same as the U.S. Navy. And now you have Taiwan building their own natively designed and constructed fast attack corvettes. These are countries that realize when the bell rings, help might not be coming. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Not just because of the feckless dotard who currently inhabits the Oval Office, because there's a lack of political will in this country to engage in a conflict unless we are directly attacked. Think about it. Think about it. This country is sick to death of war. We did 20 years in Afghanistan and demanded of President Trump that our troops come home. And he started the process. And Joe Biden thoroughly bungled it. President Trump got us out of Iraq, got us out of Syria, and then bombed them. I disagree on how that was carried out, but notwithstanding, we are a country that is sick of spilling blood in the sands of the Middle East, such to the point that we cheer pulling back our troops, even if we got to take the L. Afghanistan should have been done a lot better, though. But do you really think that this country has a willingness to engage in a conflict with Russia for the sake of Ukraine? Do you really think for a second that this nation has the will to engage China in a full-blown aerial and naval war? I really don't think ground troops will factor in an aerial and naval war over Taiwan. Do you really think that this country has the will to do that right now? I will tell you this. I'll make this prediction right now with 10 minutes left on this show. And challenge me in the comments if you like, but I want you to look deep in your heart, deep in your soul. Are you ready to send your children to die for Taiwan or for Ukraine? We have treaty obligations to protect both. But funny enough, legal scholars are going, well, not really. It's not really required. We never said that we would. They're not NATO. They're weaseling their way out. We have a moral obligation to protect Ukraine from Russia because we told Ukraine, if you give up your nukes, we will protect you. Point blank. Taiwan, we have a moral obligation because we failed to help the Republic of China toward the end of the Chinese Civil War. They were our allies. They were losing badly. But we were so exhausted from World War II that we couldn't help. So we said, okay, we're gonna make sure that the Chinese don't take Taiwan. As bad as the situation is here in the United States, as close to ripping apart as we are, with as many people as there are who are calling for a peaceful divorce, who are calling for secession movements, who are calling for the breakup of the United States, that we no longer want to coexist with the progressive socialists, that we on the right, on the conservative end of the spectrum, no longer want to live with them. They no longer want to live with us. They find us disgusting and morally repugnant. And the opposite is true. Do you really believe that the political will exists for us to engage in a conflict in Europe or in Asia right now? Do you think that the American people would stomach it or countenance it even for a small period of time? Even for a short while? How quickly would it fracture this country? Because Taiwan would absolutely turn into another Vietnam. Unquestionably, if it came down to ground combat. It'd be a meat grinder. Ukraine would be a bloodbath. The foreign minister of Ukraine told the EU, expect 5 million refugees if Russia invades. Do you think the American people would countenance it? This nation, we're at each other's throats already on the home front. If you were to introduce an external conflict, people would snap. There's a point where a society breaks from pressures, from different pressures. You have your economic pressures that people historically point to, like inflation, like joblessness, poverty. When people can't feed themselves or their children, they tend to get a little uppity. Then you have when people rebel against authoritarian measures. When the government is repressive and oppressive and beats them down through regulation and arbitrary enforcement. Then you have when there's so much crime that society breaks down because laws aren't being enforced or they're being enforced unevenly. Like, I don't know, when you have Antifa getting off with a slap in the wrist, then you have January 6th rioters getting, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years. When justice is broken, when there is a lack of faith in the institutions, when these things break down, when there are supply shortages, when there's no food in the grocery stores, when it takes weeks to fulfill shipments, when there's an energy shortage, and then when there's war. When there's war that the people don't believe in, that the people don't want to fight. And we're asked to send our sons and daughters overseas to die. To fight and die. In wars that potentially cannot be won. I strongly question whether the United States, with our full power and might, could indefinitely hold off the Chinese in Taiwan. for no other reason than the fact that there's nothing but the Taiwan Strait between Taiwan and 1 billion Chinese. That's not much of an exaggeration. That's not much hyperbole. If they hit the panic button and fully drafted everybody capable of wielding a weapon, that's 1 billion Chinese. What we got? 300,000 total troops in this country? We can send them all? I don't think so. All these things happening, though, at once would be a near insurmountable obstacle for a competent president to handle. Who do we have? We've got Joe Biden. We've got Joe Biden, who tells the same story about how many miles he flew on Air Force One 7 times and can't seem to get it right once, never minding the fact that it's a made-up story to begin with. Yeah, there's that. Guy who says how much trouble he's going to get in if he answers questions. The President of the United States talking about getting in trouble? With who? His handlers? His wife? His press secretary? We have weak, feckless leadership right now. We have no leadership right now. We have a people who don't believe in their own government right now. The vast majority of Republicans, present company included, do not believe that Joe Biden was legitimately elected President of the United States, and do believe that we are currently under the administration of a government placed there by a coup. By a bloodless coup. And now, on top of the COVID-19 panic, on top of the tragedies born from that, on top of the economic blowback of the lockdown, massive job loss and unemployment, massive capital loss from people burning through their savings, and a supply line crisis. Now, the prospect of war on 2 fronts. There's a reason that Biden is saying he won't defend Ukraine. He won't put boots on the ground. Because he can't. All right, folks. From Arizona. Keep your heads on a swivel. Watch yourselves. Good night. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America. End transmission.